Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Pictures About Pictures. Today, with me, as always, I have Venerable Reese.
It is me.
It is him, and one guest we no longer have with us today is that fucking Echo. It's gone, it's dead, it's out of here. I called up Captain America and I said, "Listen, buddy, I have a problem. This villain's got to go." And he came across and he was like, "It's not an American villain, though, so I had to do all of it myself." Anyway, how are you today, Reese?
It was a wasted phone call. I'm okay, a little sick, but otherwise ready to talk about things.
Send healing vibes. So yeah, Captain America. I guess we're getting right into it.
Yeah.
I can actually remember my first time viewing Captain America. I don't think it was in the cinema, but I don't remember when I saw it.
No,
So
I didn't watch it in cinema either.
I decided to search my tweet history, and because I've been on Twitter for like 12 horrible years, and I've tweeted a lot of shit, so I could just search my tweet history to see what I initially thought about things when they came out, which is something I do sometimes. But the earliest tweet I could find for Captain America was on May 28th, 2014, which is just a tweet: "Oh God, I hate Captain America," and I don't know why, because I don't hate Captain America. I don't know if I was even talking about the film or the character, but I guess maybe that might have been. I briefly mentioned on a previous stream that I was annoyed that in the Lego Marvel Avengers game you have to start playing through Captain America's story first before you get to the Avengers stuff, and I found that really boring for some reason. I think that's more a flaw of the game than anything, because this movie, I'm gonna go ahead and say it, it's a damn good movie. I liked it a lot.
I would go far as to saying it's my favourites out of the original Avenger films.
Oh damn, that's pretty.
And there's a lot of reasons for that.
Is that Phase 1 you're on about, yeah?
Yeah, so like the lead up to Avengers,
Yeah.
December.
It's heartfelt,
I'd say,
isn't
definitely.
it? It's like a really heartfelt movie.
Everything feels so genuine
Yeah.
in it.
As opposed to
Everything
Thor,
feels like
which
so
was really
weighted
cheesy.
and so genuine. Yeah, I mean it's one hell of a transition going from Thor to this.
Yeah.
For sure.
And you have some direct comparisons as well. Well, actually, no, I say that. The only direct comparison I can think of is the romance, and I think the romance in Thor wasn't terrible. But the romance in this is really genuine and sweet. The only thing I didn't like about
genuine.
The only thing I didn't like about it is it was also slightly cliche, and we'll get to why I thought that in a moment, but or later on in the stream. But I was thinking about this just before we started. Have you noticed how every superhero origin movie has a romance attached to it? Like Iron Man was good because it was subversive with that, but so far Thor and Captain America, off the top of my head, Ant-Man as well.
Well, Captain America was subversive in a way, but it still ended up, because of Captain America being Captain America, it kind of went back on itself in the film anyway. So, just because obviously how it turned out. But the idea, I mean, it's that point is expanded on in the later films and stuff anyway, especially with Endgame.
Yeah, Captain. So. Yes, yeah. Endgame, by the way, makes this film a really nice rewatch, because the romance in this is tragic initially, but then in Endgame, when you realize obviously how that ends. Spoilers for Endgame. Obviously, we are kind of our general spoiler umbrella here is the entirety of the MCU so far, which has been up to Spider-Man: Far From Home. So obviously, at the end of Endgame, Steve Rogers goes back in time and gets that rain check, fulfills his promise to Peggy Carter, not Penny Carter.
Goes and gets some of that life that Tony was talking to him about.
Yeah, and that's really nice.
I believe the quote is.
But I'll tell you what, I guess I'm kind of skipping to the end of the movie here, but when he's actually on that call to Peggy Carter at the end there, I was legitimately touched. It was really emotional. It was
really sweet, yeah. It was, yeah, that got me as well. It's so good. Like, it's a very emotional movie, and that's what makes it feel so genuine. It's because you can feel the emotion that a lot of stuff's happening. Like, you can feel the struggle of Steve Rogers wanting to do something good and basically being powerless to do it. But then given a chance just because of his good nature, just because of being the good man he is, he gets that chance, and then he goes off and obviously gets stuck into it. Which emotion is very important, I think, in this movie, and specifically around Steve Rogers, and how that sort of changes things in the film, which we'll get into once we start diving into specific scenes and things.
Yeah. I was also going to say so obviously the miraculous thing about Steve Rogers is his transformation into Captain America via the super soldier serum. But that's not the only miraculous thing about it. When you think about it, getting frozen in the ice like that and preserved perfectly for 70 years, that's pretty much on par with his superhero origins for something crazy and out there that could happen to a person. I just thought that was kind of fun to think about, the fact that, like, most superhero origin stories, you get one crazy thing that happens that, like, puts them on their path, but this one, it happens twice. And I think that's because, if I remember right, Captain America was originally a comic that came out around wartime, or at least shortly after, as kind of like this morale boosting semi-propaganda, you know, fuck yeah, America against the Nazis, here's a comic about America personified going and beating up Hitler, all this kind of stuff.
Which they use in the movie very well as well.
Yeah, it's super interesting how, as the comics have like gone through time, there's this thing called sliding Marvel time, which is just this basically get out of jail free card for the fact that time within the Marvel comic universe does not move nearly as fast as time, obviously our time, especially with all the time travel and the reboots. Well, half reboots, they've never fully rebooted their comics and stuff. Yeah, like for instance, I believe Spider-Man's in his 30s at this point. I don't even know anymore. It's a whole mess. But
I mean, when with all the different universes and shit, when it goes on with the Marvel comics, it can get a little confusing. So
yeah, exactly.
I think we've multiple times we've sat in Discord and just like researched alternate reality versions of characters.
Yeah, like what the fuck?
I think my favorite though is always Spiders-Man.
Spiders-Man.
I think Spiders-Man is my favorite.
A bunch of spiders who think that they're Peter Parker.
Yeah, it's like a colony of spiders. Yeah, they think they are Peter Parker, and so they come together as a dude.
They should make a movie about that.
Brilliant.
They should put that one in the next Spider-Verse.
It's so fucking someone keeps saying. I think it was Donkey that said this recently as well. It's like the new Spider-Man games will only be good if they put Big Wheel in it.
Also,
so, yeah, the best villain.
Yeah, but when you consider the fact that Captain America gets put on ice, obviously, for 70 years, that's how they dealt with it in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I don't know if they retconned his origin in the comics to be that too, or I think they might have. I might be wrong, or at least in like maybe the Ultimate Universe. There's a whole bunch of different Marvel universes. We'll be here for hours if we go down that rabbit hole.
I think the reason they did it is because it was definitely like a modern take on the Avengers, or the Avengers story, I guess.
Yeah, we'll see that.
Because obviously, that leads on into stuff later on in like in-world technology, and then that's how they ultimately change the different characters and stuff. Like, I mean, I think Spider-Man is a very, like any of the Spider-Man films is a very big testament to that. Obviously with Mysterio, which obviously
his redesign.
I'm not going to say any more about, just in case we do get into spoiler territory, because that's after Endgame.
Yeah, I did say up until Far From Home.
But Far From Home as well. Up until, did you say?
Yeah, I did.
That one included. Okay, I wasn't sure if you said like before. Okay, yeah, but obviously Mysterio and his whole thing. Obviously, what's he called? Vulture.
Yeah.
We'll see with his big technological stuff. Which
yeah,
I thought
they
was very
have
interesting.
This big challenge of not just bringing them into the real world, but also modernizing them in that way, which is super interesting.
This is why.
I think it allows for creative freedom to a degree as well.
Oh, sorry, Karen.
I was just saying, I think it allows people to be more free in their designs.
That's why I think it's so good that they started with Tony Stark and Iron Man. It's because they set the expectation of what kind of technology can exist in this universe, and it's not out there that. I mean, they pretty much make the point. It's not out there that his technology gets into some different hands that you maybe wouldn't want to.
Yeah.
And so that obviously expands across that universe, across obviously their planet, and then out into the universe as well. And then obviously when you get to Guardians of the Galaxy, then there's even more technology beyond that.
Oh, I love that movie.
And so they're very good at building up this escalation of what fits in world.
Yeah.
Without being too crazy and being like, oh well, this doesn't make sense in the universe. And it's like, well, it does because of this.
At the same time, though, they were faithful to Captain America's original origin story because he can't, like,
Yeah.
that's his character, like, that's his entire thing. You can't really change that
I mean-
without changing the core concept of him.
Exactly. Captain America is a very propagandic sort of thing. So it makes sense that it wouldn't be able to be done in a more modern setting because Captain America, that's a really fucking stupid name. Why would they call you that?
Yeah.
Whereas in the 1940s, in wartime,
Yeah.
it makes so much sense.
Yeah, look at the soldiers of
So-
today, and on the front lines, it's Captain America. Like, you can.
Exactly. Like, it makes so much sense. It makes so much sense.
Yeah, but the only thing I'll say, the only stick in the mud I have about that is it's a little unlikely that not only does Steve Rogers get frozen in the ice for 70 years, but also Bucky, when he survives, they decide to put him on ice and save. It's been a while since I've seen Winter Soldier, and we'll get to it, but they also decide to put Bucky on ice and save him for the future. So basically, that
Yeah.
because
I
he's
haven't
such
seen
an
it
important part of
specifically,
Captain
so-
America's story arc that they need to be together. But I think that's only the kind of
It
thing
was-
that you really have to nitpick to be annoyed about. So I don't think it's really
Yeah,
a
because
problem.
it is weird that you can't. They kind of like they're like, oh yeah, he's dead by the way. It's like, is he though? Like,
Oh yeah. I
for
don't-
anyone who's obviously is obviously savvy with the character when this film came out, and obviously that happened, they were like, why would they? That makes zero sense. Like, you know,
Yeah.
like it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but
It seems
also
like a bit of an odd
they-
thing to do.
they made it look like quite like a thing to get him back, to save him. I
Yeah.
don't remember if they really go into detail about how they saved him in Winter Soldier, but he looked fucking doomed. Like, that is a big fucking valley. Even if I think there was some icy water at the bottom. That's still
I mean,
such a fucking
something
drop, it
that
would
could
surely kill him.
be, yeah, but something could be pointed out. He was strapped to a table when he saved him from that place, wasn't he? And he looked fucking out of it, so he was probably drugged up with something. So who's to say that it was something that actually ended up saving him, and then obviously
Yeah, maybe.
he was put into the super soldier
Yeah,
thing
I
or
guess we'll
whatever it
just
was.
have to see
I haven't
Winter
seen Winter
Soldier
Soldier, so
again.
the only context I have of it.
Oh yeah, you
I haven't
seen
seen Winter
it at
Soldier,
all.
so the only context I have is from Civil War.
It's such
so-
an important movie.
I've heard it's a very good movie, yeah, and I'll probably love it because I know there's a lot of stuff that ties in a lot of things.
It's quite a
so
traditional.
I'm
If I
interested in
remember
watching
right,
it.
it's quite a traditional modern action style movie. Whereas
Mm.
this was obviously more of a wartime movie, but it's more of like a fucking. For some reason, all I can think of is Action Man, but it's basically Action Man.
Yeah.
It's a good movie.
Yeah.
though.
I mean,
You've probably seen
that's what
that
Captain
gif.
America is.
Yeah, you've probably seen that gif of Steve Rogers in the elevator with the guys. Right, yeah. That's a fun scene.
Yeah.
But yeah. Moving on then. I forgot that David Bradley was in the MCU. There are so many, like, small characters played by
Yeah,
quite
yeah,
major
yeah.
actors. Like, Natalie Dormer's in this as
Like-
well. And she's on screen
Yep,
for, like, 2
yep.
minutes.
Yep.
Although she might not have been quite
She is not.
as famous back then,
Oh yeah, for sure, yeah, because this was before.
before Game of
Yeah,
Thrones.
Yeah, I was gonna say you are talking about the person in Game of Thrones, aren't you? Yeah,
Mm.
this is before she was in Game of Thrones, I think. So, because she would have been in, she would have been. It would have been like
was in the
probably a couple years
Tudors.
after this.
But I'm not sure how popular the Tudors was. But she was in the Tudors.
Yeah, I'm not surprised she got pulled to do something like Game of Thrones. She's a very attractive lady. But yeah, yeah.
I mean,
But yeah,
that's...
I remember like not recognizing her in anything when I first watched Captain America. So
Yeah.
shrug.
Yeah. Also, yeah, but David Bradley, obviously Walter Frey, obviously in it too. And whenever I see David
Yep.
Bradley, I just have such respect for that actor because he doesn't have a huge role in this movie,
Oh.
but he's so good at playing such a diabolical, vindictive old man. Like,
Oh yeah.
I'm
for
sure he's a lovely person.
I mean, that's pretty much.
But-
He's probably just been typecast that for like so long
Well-
now. Like Filch, fucking.
Yeah,
obviously
Filch is the
Will
first
Bray.
thing I remember seeing. in
Ugh.
this. But I can tell you actually a role he doesn't play as a vindictive, horrible old man. He played. They did when Doctor Who turned 50. They did a whole thing, a whole little docudrama thing, if I remember right. It might have just been a drama, which basically retold the events of the inception of Doctor Who, and he played William Hartnell, who was the first Doctor. And they actually brought him back for one of the Christmas specials as the first Doctor, so he played both William Hartnell and the character
Right.
that William Hartnell actually plays. But he did fantastic work in those. I love that guy. He's great. I'm always happy to see him and stuff. And I always know,
Yeah,
apart
yeah.
from those two instances, I'm probably going to hate him. But yeah, I know that was like a minor character, but I just wanted to point out that David Bradley's cool. He's a cool guy.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Also, I forgot how directly this ties into 4. Like,
Yeah, ties into Thor straight away, and that's good. The way they tie stuff in is very good.
I
in
don't
these
remember
films.
Phase 1 being as tied together as it is, and it's
Oh yeah,
done
it's
really
super
well.
tied together. It's crazy. Like it's not like it's like obnoxiously done either. It's literally just here's a name that's already been already been established, you know. And then being like, oh, so that's how this relates to that. Like literally, like the first words is like, oh, this used to be the crown jewel of Odin's treasure room.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay,
I like.
that's interesting.
Yeah, I peeked up when he said that. I was like, oh yeah, I remember that guy from last week.
But something that I love about the start of this film is they establish 2 symbols immediately. They establish Cap's shield when obviously they're finding Frozen, and then they establish the Hydra emblem straight after.
Yeah.
Which I think is fantastic how they do that, and then how they establish the villain right away as well, where you've got the 4 people. It was like 4 of the soldiers. Oh, probably should say before we go any further, we will be mentioning German Nazis, because obviously the film does go into the war with obviously the Nazis.
I thought it kind of avoided the Nazi stuff, to be honest.
It does mention it a few times, and there is a quick flash of the Nazi symbol at one point. But I mean, that's probably why they went full on into the Hydra stuff as well, because it was like Hydra's not, you know.
Yeah, they were like, it was like, oh, Hydra are like a Nazi science division, and then flash cut to the Red Skull guy. I'm afraid I don't remember the actor's name, but him basically being.
I mean, he's been in a lot. He's fucking Oberon.
He's really cool, though.
He's Oberon from Lord of the Rings, and he's also Agent Smith from Matrix. As well.
Yeah, he is. I
can't remember the actor's name though. He's a big name actor, and I don't remember his name.
This movie had so many good actors in it. So many. I couldn't get over
his German accent was a bit crap, but
yeah, some of them were doing crappy German accents, but it had good actors. Bucky looked like Rob Stark, or I've forgotten the actor's name. I did know it earlier, but he looked like Rob Stark a lot, and it kept throwing me off.
Yeah. That was another funny. Yeah, those points. Yeah, with his short hair and his double E face.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, one thing I was gonna say about that like starting scene as well is they establish the villain and they establish the power as well, like the strength of said villain,
and
because you've got the 4 dudes like, you've got the 4, exactly, like they immediately establish, oh, this guy's an asshole, this guy's blah 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 blah, you know, like they really establish that very quickly, which I think is very good. And one of the ways they almost show off how strong he is you've got the 4 soldiers trying to push the thing off. He wanders up, pushes it once, and it's gone. And it's like, okay, so this dude's really strong. Got ya. Like, it's such a simple way of being like, okay, this is the villain. These have got bad guys. He's very strong. He also shoot a guy because why not?
Always strong. Yeah, because he took one of those super soldier serums, but it didn't turn out right, and for some reason that melted his skin off his head. That was a little skipped over, but that's that plot. That's what that was.
Well, because they were trying to be mysterious about it. Like, they were. I mean, which was fine. I think that was fine.
Yeah, it was fine.
I understand what they were doing.
Red Skull, he came across as kind of a cheesy Golden Age comic villain, and it's because he is. But at the same time, they did it in a way where it wasn't actually cheesy. Like, you could kind of see the ghost of the comics, like in the dialogue between Captain America and Red Skull.
Sure, yeah.
You could see that, but at the same time, it was really well done, because at the same time, it didn't feel out of place or unrealistic.
I think one of my favorite things about him as well is you can kind of see, even though he is part of like the R&D like stuff, like research and development stuff. You can kind of see, like, even though he's there, he's not really a part of any of that. He's kind of just overseeing it. Like, you can very much tell that he's used to just doing things, you know, more directly. Specifically when those 3 soldiers are there being like, oh, Hitler is saying what you're doing. He wants to know. He's going to shut you down.
Wait, Germany is on this
and then
map.
he tries.
I like that.
Berlin is here.
Yeah, that's the one.
Why is Berlin marked? And then he shoots him with a laser. But like, he's like
racism.
messing with the laser and he fucks it up a couple of times, and he's just like fucking like he gets like the way he like portrays that. He's like, God damn it, just got there we go. Okay, got it.
I like how in these movies nothing's perfect. Like people fuck up, like they do tiny little fuck
Yeah.
ups. Mostly, most prevalently in Iron Man, but it's in the other movies too.
I think it's one of the things that shows like this technology is completely like
New,
beyond what they understand. Like in the beginning with Howard Stark's flying car that immediately breaks.
Yeah, that was
Obviously the
funny.
laser stuff there.
Oh, you just
Um,
reminded me. Jenna Louise Coleman is in this for like a second as well. Like I said, so many major actors who I guess maybe weren't as major back then, but like so many major actors who I was just like, wait, huh? They're in it. Oh, they're gone now. Okay, that was weird.
yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that. It's pretty funny.
I have it
But
in
yeah,
my notes in
there's just a
caps.
lot of. Mm, for sure. But yeah, there's a lot of that in it, and I think it's really interesting. How because even though this technology exists, they don't know like, they don't really know what they're doing with it because it's so new.
Hmm.
Which I think is very interesting. Like when Howard Stark's also researching the stuff that Steve Rogers brought back, and he's just like, oh, and he puts a current through and it explodes, and he's just like, write it down.
Yeah, that was great.
Like it's so obvious, like this technology is so beyond them, but it's like if you literally like went back to like the Stone Age or something and gave someone a gun. It's like that kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah,
which I think
exactly.
is very interesting. The whole film kind of plays around this, like, because obviously Red Skull's whole thing is he wants to walk in the footsteps of gods, kind of deal, But he's messing with shit he doesn't understand as a result.
Yeah.
But he's like, well, I will understand because it's pretty much like my destiny and all this. When
Yeah.
everyone else is like, careful.
Easy does it. Let's talk about Sprawny Chris Evans. I told you I did some research, and this was my last minute research I did because my initial notes were, how did they make Chris Evans Sprawny? His voice does not match his
because
look.
I believe it is. Yeah, because it is super. I believe it is like superimposed.
It's not superimposed. They went frame by frame, and as far as I can tell, photoshopped it. Well, not photoshopped, but using their technology, they went frame by frame and sprawnified him. Hang on, I've got a quote here.
Oh my god!
For Captain America, Lola, which I'm guessing is the name of a company, worked on over 300 shots, which were primarily the body transformation of Chris Evans, but also some work on nose replacement of Red Skull, 80 shots.
Everything looked good.
Here's the kind of fucked up thing about it, though. The reason that technology exists is because there have been movies where the actors have put on a bit of weight, and so they've been employed to come in and trim them. Yeah. Yeah, that's so shitty. Not to put a downer on it, but that's why that technology exists. But I thought it was so interesting. I kind of assumed that they just superimposed them.
I mean, well, you say it's shitty, but it could also be a case of instead of making them work to keep a certain look, they can just work around it so they have a bit more freedom. It could just be a case of that.
That's true,
like,
but it
this
does
is how the
also
character
perpetuate
looks.
the narrative.
If you cannot maintain that, we'll just work it in post.
True, but it does also perpetuate the narrative of, like it or not, this is what the ideal body looks like.
For sure.
And you should feel bad if you don't look like this. There's that major problem our society has.
I honestly think it just depends on how you view it. It honestly just depends. I think.
It can be done unethically, but also if it helps the actors not have to live an unhealthy lifestyle. I think they just shouldn't have to have that expectation of looking that, like, amazing.
Like that shredded all the time. Like, because that shit's like. I mean, people like Henry Cavill make it look easy, but fucking it takes so much work.
Yeah.
I mean, just using Henry Cavill as an example as well. For anyone who's watched The Witcher on Netflix, the bathtub scene. Apparently, he dehydrated himself for 2 days to look that good, which is severely unhealthy.
Yeah, I think you shouldn't be encouraging actors to do that. To be honest, yeah.
I mean, I imagine part of it was because he wanted it to look as
Yeah. I'm sure he wanted that as well, but
you don't look that like huge and not know obviously what certain things will do to make you look better. That's something you probably have first-hand knowledge of.
Yeah, but either way,
again, it's still it's a whole
debate in it. But I sent you that image of that shot where Chris Evans is sat next to or Captain. He's not even Captain America. Fucking what's the name I'm fucking searching for? Because Captain America's alternate identity. Steve Rogers. Where Steve Rogers is sat next to Peggy
I've
Carter
said
in
it
the
like
cab.
3 times.
I know.
Wow.
Oh, I didn't. Oh, that didn't come through for me. I didn't hear that. That's weird.
I said Steve Rogers. No, I didn't say it then. I meant I've said it
Oh,
throughout
okay.
this whole
Okay.
thing. I've said
But
it
yeah,
several
yeah.
times.
I just have shitty short-term memory because obviously I know who Steve Rogers
That's
is.
okay.
But Steve Rogers is sat next to Peggy Carter, and he doesn't look like real. Like most of the time, yeah.
That I think that's the only scene it looks
a
quite
bit
bad.
off. Yeah,
Everywhere
I
else,
said that
it
to you on
looks very
Discord. I
good.
was like, nobody looks that like.
I think it's
proportioned.
because it's a stationary like thing that's close up because it's an area that, I think the issue is it's an area that's a focus. Every other shot is him in a place.
I think
where
it's also,
this is almost like in a confined space.
I think also because he's so directly next to her, like you can compare the two.
For sure.
And it's like just his entire body
it's shot by
fits
shot.
inside her. It's
Yeah, because
weird.
it's a side by side shot.
Yeah.
It's literally because it's a side by side shot, so there's a
Yeah.
more contract when you've got the comparison there. Where before it was a I can't remember what the name of the shot's called, but like with Bucky, for example, it was a switching camera angle from behind Bucky and then behind Steve. So
Yeah.
obviously when Steve's talking, it's behind Bucky and so on. I can't remember what that camera angle's called, but it's like the back and forth conversation. I would call it a conversation camera, shall we? Where it's like the back and forth, which is I think it's very good. But it kind of alleviates that because one isn't so much in focus when the other one's talking. So, but I honestly think that's just the issue. Is because it was two people in full focus in a very confined space, so you can much easier see the issues. I think. But yeah.
Yeah. Also,
But in terms of that, though, I think aside from that, I think it looked fine.
I was going to say as well.
Believable.
This is a different point entirely, but I was going to say this movie is extremely patriotic, but not in a way that I find gross. So, for instance, Call of Duty, Modern Warfare, I played about a year ago. The campaign for it, I'd never played it before, and that is a gross patriotic game.
Yeah.
It's hoorah as they're shooting, like, you know.
It's one of those things. It's one of those things. It very much glorifies war.
Yeah.
And
this,
which obviously, war is bad, by the way, if you didn't know.
Yeah, thanks for that PSA. I wasn't aware. but I was gonna say, I think one of the reasons why Captain America isn't so grossly patriotic, like you could probably still pick out problems with it if you were looking for them, but it's not like grossly patriotic in a way that they don't vilify an entire nation, because the very guy who feeds Chris Evans, Steve Rogers, the super serum, is German. He says people often forget that the first country that the Nazis invaded was Germany, and I think I don't know if that was in the original comics, but I think that was a very important thing to put in a movie like this.
It was something established early on, which set the tone for the movie very well.
Yeah.
It wasn't a case of the Germans are bad. It was this one character is bad, and everyone working with him is bad.
And even
And
when
I think that's escalated as well because of how like cartoonishly villain as he is at times as well.
Yeah.
Like it's a very exaggerated evil to a point.
Oh yeah, Red Skull. I mean, doesn't he basically just want the entire world? That's basically what he says. His assistant.
World
says.
domination. It's very.
Yeah.
It's a very.
He
It's a
literally wants
very
world
like.
domination.
It's a very cartoon sort of overblown thing for villains, which is good.
And
that kind of sets it very well.
but I think it is also important to defining the character of Steve Rogers that he's not in this very black and white kill all the Germans kind of a narrative. Like one of the first things we hear from him when he's signing up is, so you want to kill Nazis? And you would assume the correct answer would be yes, but the correct answer was actually the one which he gave, which was, I don't want to kill anyone. I want to just... I forget what the second half of that was, shit. But basically...
he says, I don't want to kill anyone. I don't like bullies.
That's the one, yes. And I think that's very important, because he's not saying, I want to kill... I mean, first of all, I'm not saying that... I'm not getting into the whole discussion of whether you should punch a Nazi or not. Yes, punch a Nazi. But also, I think it's important to the character of Steve Rogers that he's more upset about the nature of the person than the affiliation of the person, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
But I guess the Nazis are kind of an extreme example. Anyway, moving on. So, I liked when he was too short for the soldier reflection. That was a very quick and simple way of showing that he doesn't quite size up for the job. That was a nice little shot there. When I saw Winter Soldier, I didn't, and obviously you haven't seen Winter Soldier yet, but obviously Bucky's a prominent character in that. For some reason, I didn't connect the Bucky of that movie to the Bucky of this movie. I think I didn't care as much about Marvel movies at that time, and I hadn't drawn the dots, or maybe I hadn't even seen the first movie before the second. I don't even remember anymore. But now that I've obviously seen the rest of Phase 1, 2, and 3, it's been really fun to just kind of like keep an eye on Bucky in this movie and be like, this is standard Bucky before all of the shit he goes through.
He's just a soldier. That's all he is. Like,
he's not a super complex character, but
he's a standard soldier who's doing his part. Like, he's an able-bodied man fighting in the war.
Yeah,
that's literally that's all he is.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, he's quite basic.
The only thing that makes him unique is he's so close friends with Steve Rogers, or the main reason he becomes a thing later on, because he's friends with Captain America.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I think that's probably also one of the reasons why Steve Rogers is friends with him as well. He's just a decent bloke.
Exactly.
There's not too much to him.
Because it's one of those things as well where a lot of the relationships he has with people are based on who he is rather than how he looks. Because I mean, the whole thing, obviously Peggy, obviously there is an interest there, like
before he even becomes buff,
she touches his pec.
Apparently,
that part where she quickly touches his pec, apparently that was just impromptu. Apparently she just did it, which is amazing. But yeah, and obviously with Bucky as well, that whole relationship and how the interaction isn't different from when he gets the serum to before. Like, it's literally the exact same. The only thing that's different is obviously Steve's sort of demeanor is slightly different.
Yeah.
But his ideals are still there. And that's what I think is really interesting when he does get the true serum as well, is true serum? The super serum, sorry. He
doesn't need true serum, he's always true form.
This is true form. When I can't remember his name, but obviously the doctor says, promise me that you'll keep your ideals.
Yes.
Your body will change, but I want your mind to stay the same.
Yeah.
Because that's why he picked him, because his frame of mind is very different to everyone, and he believes that the war needs good men to, set things right, rather than more people to kill people.
Yeah. Damn straight.
Very interesting, and a very good point.
Yeah, I like that. It's I gotta say though, we don't see much of. I guess there wasn't time for it, and I guess it's not ultimately important. But you don't see why Steve. I guess you do see why Steve is so genuine, because he's been bullied his whole life. He knows what it's like to be bullied. And
well, that's what the doctor says as well. I think it's that same conversation he has with him. It's literally like someone who's been weak all their life understands, the finer things, empathy, and all this stuff.
Yeah,
but someone who's born strong doesn't get that.
Yeah, and he's like, thanks, I think.
And then he's like, just promise me you'll stay the same way even when you're strong.
And when he dies, he points to his heart, and he's like, no, don't worry.
Good man. Yeah.
Like, the last thing he has to know before he died is, did the transformation change you at all? And, Steve lets him know that, through that.
It's basically, because it's the same motion he does when not a good soldier, a good man. And it's the same motion of when he says, because he punctuates it with whenever he says good man, and punctuates it with a point.
Yeah.
And it's the exact same point. And so he's like, well, I know what I got to do now. And then he runs into a store by accident.
I've just remembered. Did you notice it zooms in on his book where he kept all of his notes on the research? It zooms in on his book being left behind in the room that then explodes. They really wanted to get across to the audience that if you're wondering why they didn't make 12 more Captain Americas between now and Iron Man, it's because the research got destroyed. And then obviously in the later scene we see that he drops the final vial of it as well, and it just trickles away into the drain or something.
Like it smashes,
Yeah, and you could say it's still slightly improbable that in 70 years no one else came up with a similar formula, but I mean that's kind of, if I remember right, that's kind of where some of the villain stories and stuff come from. Like, they tried to replicate the super soldier serum. I think that might even be something to do with the Hulk in this cinematic universe, but I might be wrong. Again, we didn't watch the Hulk, but
I
I know that's gamma
don't
rays and
think
that's slightly
so.
different. But
Oh
it
no,
might have
no,
been the
they
same.
try and replicate the stuff by taking his blood.
Yeah.
Because in that film, he sends it to a researcher dude who's researching it, and then he basically duplicates it. He basically makes he synthesizes it somehow.
Yeah.
So he has like loads of it, and then when he sees it, he's like, "Oh shit, you need to get rid of this. This is bad." And then obviously I can't remember what he's called, but the guy that gets kicked into the tree, he obviously goes there and he's like, "Put this shit in me," and then that's when he like hulks out as well.
Gotcha.
I can't remember what that villain's called though. When he's like full Hulk out, orange man with the spine.
I don't know.
He's like off orange. He's got a big spine. Still love that scene, by the way. When he walks up to him, he's like, "Oh," and he's like talking shit, and he just kicks him, and he hits a tree, and he dies. It's like my favorite thing.
After Steve Rogers got transformed, the first thing I wrote down are those are America's abs. Because
those are indeed America's abs.
And everyone just crowding around him, going, "Ooh."
Well, yeah, because he was so small and now he's big.
I know. I just like to think that
He was small and now
instead of
he's big.
marveling the scientific endeavor that just happened, they're instead just going, "Oh, damn,
It's
yonky."
it's so American. It's very it's very much like that time. I think it's just like this weapon. Ooh.
Although the second the scientist dies, they're just kind of like, "Okay, that's cool. That's not going to win the war, and then they just kind of like brush him aside. It's like, oh. But,
well, they're basically like, we don't know. Well, they're basically just like, we don't know what to do with you because the guy that knew what to do with you is dead.
Yeah, I guess.
With all the research as well.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just because the research is dead. His whole point was to get Steve to where he was, not to then point him in the right direction after that. That's you give that to the army and you
give him the ability to do things, which is why he ended up doing it anyway. But obviously, the thing was, he was just. He was just
I guess
a soldier still, technically.
Yeah,
so
I guess the whole point is
go and do his own thing.
That the people he was trying to convince saw that it was a success and saw what Steve became, but they were still like, yeah, but the serum's gone now and one soldier can't win a war. And they underestimate him because obviously he doesn't win the war, but he still like saves the world. And
yes.
It shows that Steve Rogers, one of his main powers is his strength of character. And
yes.
For some reason I just got a flashback to the Halo Infinite trailer where they said they can build the suit but they can't build hope for the guy within it. But that's a completely different topic. I also wanted to quickly point out that Peggy Carter's a goddamn deadeye because she shot that guy in the car from so fucking far away. I was like, oh damn.
She's an agent as well. She's got Agent Carter a lot, which is
and she's got a whole series that I haven't seen, but I might watch it at some point.
But yeah, she's straight up badass.
She kicks ass. I very much like her.
She does. She kicks ass and takes names.
In that same chase scene where the guy takes a hostage and the kid and then throws him in the water, and then Steve Rogers is all ready to dive in after him, and he says, "Go kill him! I can swim!" And I just put, "Attaboy." That's that like World War II spirit though, isn't it? Of everyone has to do their part. And the kid took that to heart and was like, "Go kill him!" They're very good at that.
Yeah. Sure.
And it was around that time. Oh, it's around this time as well. After Steve decides to go do a whole bunch of propaganda, and they were doing the Star Spangled Man with a Plan song. I just put, God, this film is so fucking patriotic. It's
every bond you buy is a bullet in the barrel of your best guy's gun.
Still not as good as Give Me a Fat Beat to Beat My Buddy's Ass to, but
but it's decent, but yeah, he's up there. We need one from every film, please.
But I like that he had his notes on the inside of his shield to read, because it showed that his heart wasn't in it. He was literally reading notes on stage. He wasn't memorizing that shit. And obviously you see over time he gets depressed in that role because he's not doing what he really wanted to do, especially when he gets to the place where the real soldiers are doing what really matters, and they quite rightfully boo him off stage.
It's so perfect and perfectly described exactly what propaganda is.
Yeah.
Because propaganda is for the people that aren't at war. Propaganda is for the people that aren't already there.
Yeah, you don't
I mean, one of
the
soldiers says it in the crowd. He's like, I already volunteered.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here. And it's like, it's so blatant, like a contrast in that you may be this very like astute figure to a degree, but that's that's for civilians. That's for people that like you're trying to get you're trying to get money out of to help war effort, and once you go to the people that are already like fucking neck deep in that shit, they're not gonna care.
Yeah. Very true. Is so throughout all of this, the romance between him and Peggy Carter is budding, and like we said, it's a very genuine romance. But I also said it was cliche earlier, and the cliche part that really annoyed me was when Natalie Dormer snogs him, and it's the whole "it's not what it looks like" moment. I fucking hate those moments because it puts you, the audience, in the annoying what's the word? Not pathetic. The annoying dramatic irony of that that's not what Steve. He didn't initiate that, and like to be fair, they didn't really show him trying to pull away. But I mean, but when Peggy Carter rightfully lost faith in him after that because she just saw him snogging someone, she was like, "Oh, you're just like every other soldier." Like she lost some respect for him and all this kind of stuff. It annoys you.
I mean, yeah.
It's just annoying because it feels like, oh, the romance is going too far. They need to delay it so that it can have a bigger build up towards the end of the movie. It just felt annoying. I hate that shit.
Yeah, I honestly think they just did that so they'd have an excuse for Peggy to shoot at him.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a pretty good scene.
Bang, bang, bang! It works.
Yeah, it's just like, let's test it. It's like, Jesus.
Yeah. But like it gets rectified pretty quickly after that because there's that like film, and then he's obviously got her picture in his little compass, and he's like like trying to run away.
I put she's his true north.
Aww.
How sweet.
Going back to the part where he's obviously where Peggy because we've skipped ahead a little bit here, so I'm just gonna take it back to because this is before he goes off to save soldiers. Something that I found really interesting is, and something that like plays out through like sort of major points of the film. It's almost like it's very much like, I think the word is pathetic fallacy, where it's like the weather and the environment is almost reacting to how someone is feeling.
Yeah.
So when Steve's in that little canopy, obviously it's pouring down with rain, and he's obviously very upset. Obviously finds out about Bucky, still very upset. The moment he's like, oh, I know where I need to be. He leaves. There's no more rain, and it's starting to clear outside. The idea being like his mind is clear. He knows what he needs to do, and then goes and does it.
That's true.
Very interesting.
I would also file that under the cliche area though of this film. I hate
for sure.
I remember I had an English teacher.
I like
the pathetic fallacy.
I just like that idea.
Yeah, an English teacher once told me that pathetic fallacy is overdone, but it can be done really well, but just don't make it obvious. And I think this was really obvious. But at the same time,
oh yeah, for sure.
At the same time, it was
the same with the bombed up bar as well.
What was
the same with the bombed up bar when he's just sat in the like obviously been bombed, and he's just sat in there by himself, and the whole like everything around him is just blown up.
I thought that was a more effective use of.
I'm sad because my friend died, and it's like okay. I just like I see it as more of an idea in that because it's almost like the idea that everything has been amplified to the point where like because he's been amplified, so almost to the point where his emotional thing is affecting the environment around him because he's been so superfied.
I think that worked more for Thor than Captain America though, because we know his powers don't have anything to do with the weather. Whereas Thor, that happened a few times in the Thor movie too, where when he got
I just mean generally the environment as well. Yeah. But yeah, for sure.
Like in Thor, that moment where he storms the base where Mjolnir is, and it gets more thunderous as he gets closer. That's very much
and then rains.
Although I guess that's not so much pathetic fallacy as just like, oh, something's gonna happen, and
well, that's just expectation subversion, and then using the weather as obviously a subtle reminder of that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I thought it was interesting how after Captain America gets a spot in the army, like actually doing shit like he wants to, they quickly do a montage of his adventures. And I don't know if there are any direct comic book references in there, but you get the idea that maybe a couple years pass. Like I think it starts in 1943, so maybe there's like some months that pass where because I think later on they want to be able to say that he had some war stories to tell. Um, so you want the impression that Captain America fought in World War Two, not just he was there for one thing. You know, like he
Yeah,
did
sure,
propaganda
yeah.
and then he did one battle. So I think it was good that they did that little. He got a squad and they did missions and that kind of thing happened, because it also it leaves a door open for future stuff if you want to go back and do some memories.
And it kind of like it doesn't go too deep into the like the actual war fighting stuff, which I think because
Yeah.
that's not really the point of the movie, just because it's the setting and obviously the motivation for certain things happening,
Mm.
not necessarily what the movie's about. So to have it as more like a montage style thing, I think is very good. Because I think before we watched it, you mentioned about obviously because it's a very wartimey kind of film, it's probably why you weren't initially interested.
Mm.
But I think they do it in a way which is definitely it doesn't glorify war in any way, and it doesn't spend too long on those scenes where it's like fighting is happening.
Yeah, I
Because a lot
guess.
of war is just a lot of back and forth,
Yeah.
whereas it was just a case of we're going to show off the prowess of Captain America by him just defeating all these things like
Yeah.
one after another, and then how angry Red Skull is. Oh, he's so angry.
You're failing. Why are you failing? I think he shouts.
Something like that.
Yeah, I think I was worried it was just going to be a flat out wartime movie, but it's not. It's
It's
wartime
not by
superhero
any
movie.
stretch.
It's still a superhero movie. And they do that pretty well. Before Bucky gets chucked out the train, bye bye Bucky, we see him holding Captain America's shield. I don't know if that's meant to be a direct reference to the fact that he is the new Captain America at some point in the comics, which is a thing that happens. But
Yeah, probably.
I think it was probably a nod. I mean, obviously it made sense in the action scene, but it was probably a nod to the way they choreographed that, which was cool.
There's a lot of stuff like that as well, and something that's very interesting is it. So I love that he always, rather than picks up something to attack, he always picks up something to defend himself.
Yeah, the
So
bit
the
later at the very
first time
start
when
of the
he's
movie.
first time he's building up, he's been beaten up in the alleyway, and he holds up the trash can.
When it happened, I
trash can
went,
lid.
okay.
Stay away from him. But then he does it with the door again,
Yeah.
so it's like he's never
more
looking
of
for
a
something to attack.
defender
He's
than
always
an
looking for
attacker,
something
yeah.
to protect.
By the way, you just reminded me. I was going to bring this up at the
Protect,
start.
not attack.
I'm in the middle of watching Amazon's The Boys, and it is very, it is quite a transition to go from watching the Homelander doing the stuff that he does in that series to then going to watch Captain America, who is partially based off actually be the genuine dude that he is. That is for those of you who don't know, The Boys is a show about what if superheroes existed in the real world and they were all just assholes. I didn't mean to make that sound American as I said it, but they're all just horrible people, and society treated them like they were really cool people, like the way that they're treated in Marvel. It's a good series. I'm like halfway through it, but it's very disturbing in places, and it's supposed to be. But we're not doing a whole thing on The Boys. We're doing a thing on Captain America.
Yeah, we're not. I was gonna say a point about what was I saying before about all the shield stuff? Yeah. So I just find something that's interesting is that it's always something to defend rather than attack, which is
Yes.
which perfectly fits why he ends up with the shield.
Yeah.
And why he always sticks with the shield, and then obviously they're all like, "Oh, you're very fond of that shield. Let's get you a new one." And then he like, something that's interesting as well is when they go over the shields, they've all got some sort of destructive capability
they do.
to them.
And he goes
One's got
straight.
spikes on it,
Yeah.
and he just goes one for the circle.
He goes straight for the simplest one that apparently doesn't have any offensive quality to it. They don't really explain the boomeranginess of it, which is a thing, but
Actually, well, this film actually, I think, compared to all the other ones, is very good with that stuff. Because whenever he throws it in like a weird way, he sizes it up first, throws it,
True.
and then there's points where he's waiting for it to come back, and you like jump, like he's like in the wrong position, so he'll like jump for it or something.
yeah.
I think they did it very well in this one. It gets a bit wonky later on in the later film, but in this one, I think they really tried to make it look like it would genuinely bounce around properly.
It's funny because
They genuinely tried, which I think was very good.
most of the time he just runs around for shield. Occasionally he has a gun, but you don't see him fire it very often. There was a whole fight where he had a pistol, he didn't shoot it once, but towards the end of the movie there is a fight where he uses his gun. But he loses that gun some point during the fight, and for most of the fight he just has a shield. And then at some point he loses his shield. It gets knocked away from him. It goes sliding way across the room, and I think it's a tank or something that's firing at him, and he's pinned down. And I had this moment of, oh god, he's unarmed. And then I realised, wait, he's always unarmed. He's still a fucking superhero.
Yeah. He's a super soldier,
yeah. Where are we at? Alright, I've already mentioned that. Oh yeah, so when Red Skull is giving his speech in the air hangar, you remember, there's like 8 guys stood in front of him.
I actually have a funny point about this one, but
we
I'll
might have the same point. He gives a speech to 8 guys in front of him, very impassioned, and then he turns around and finishes his speech to the fucking army stood behind him. Why aren't you addressing those guys primarily? Like, what? That was such a weird way of doing that.
One of the things I love, one of those 8 guys, when he does the Hail Hydra, looks like he's just sticking his arms right up, so he's just going, yay!
I love Hydra!
It made me laugh.
But
all of them were doing it, obviously, at like the angle. He just had them straight up, and I was like, that guy is happy to be there.
You've got to admit, though, the Hail Hydra salute is dumb. Like, I think they want it to be reminiscent of the Hitler salute, but
like twice as strong almost.
Twice as strong and with fists and stuff. But
something I love
it's so dumb.
that they set up as well is he's even worse than the Nazis. Wow, he's worse than Hitler. Wow, he wants to kill everyone, not just Jews. Wow, you know.
Yeah. There is a scene where
it's like that weird escalation of like.
Was it around that time during the where they were storming the warehouse to save Bucky? He gets in his ship, and what was it? His assistant dude, who by the way is also a really good actor. He was
not
like,
a scratch, doctor. Not a scratch.
He was like, I don't remember the exact words, but he was like, "What? There's only one seat. What am I supposed to do?" And he's like, "Get in the car downstairs or something." It reminds me of the Simpsons episode where the nuclear power plant is about to do a meltdown, and Mr. Burns runs to his escape ship, and Smithers just like, "But sir, there's only one seat. There's no room for me." He's like, "Oh, that's a shame," and he blasts off without him. That guy is basically Smithers.
Oh god. Yeah.
And that kind of reinforces the cartooniness of it as well, I think.
For sure. Not a scratch, doctor. I just love that part where he just hands in the keys. Doesn't say anything but that. It's great.
Oh yeah, that's
the technology
what it says,
is weird.
Yeah.
Like the fucking like flame spinning things, like they're jet engines, but they're they're like rocket engines, but they do a spinny thing. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Because it's on like everything that flies as well. It's on like the fucking stealth bomber as well at the end.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Does that work?
I guess this is before they invented. No, but they did. They had Spitfires and shit. Yeah, I don't know why.
Yeah, they didn't have like proper jets and stuff. I guess
they just wanted to have him to have some wacky supervillain stuff. That reminds me, there were some gadgets in this movie. It was nice to see some kind of like old wartime spy movie style gadgets in use.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say that. It's like a. It's so good.
Sorry, you cut off there, friend. It's like a what? Sorry.
It's like a war spy movie. It's so good.
Yeah, it is pretty good. It reminded me of like Alex Rider, the books I used to read as a kid, where he had all these gadgets and stuff.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, it's very like secret agent stuff. Like with Cap's fucking
I put go gadget
motorbike with like the fucking 20 buttons on it. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I put go gadget bike for that. I like how we got to that point in the same time. Oh yeah, I said when Steve gets himself captured on purpose, that's another cliche. I think this might be
fucking Americans is basically what he says, and it's like actually
I think that might be this movie's only prevailing flaw, is that it's slightly cliche, but I forgive cliches typically speaking.
Not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because it's set in an era as well where cliche stuff probably obviously isn't as
it's not cliche back then, is it?
Exactly, so they're allowed to get away
well,
with it.
It's funny you say that because you reminded me, and that's gonna be funny because the next part of my sentence was when I was at uni doing creative writing. When you remembered me about that, we were suggested, hey, you should probably set up a blog for your writing stuff. It'll be like, you'll learn blog writing, which is a thing, and I was like, yeah, sure. And I was one of the only people who actually bothered to do that. And we just had a lesson all about cliches, or a lecture all about cliches and why they're bad and stuff. And then at the end of it, my lecturer was like, I understand a couple of you have done blogs. Do you want us to look at them? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I said, go to christianrichmond.blogspot.com. That's not blogspot, sorry. christianrichmond.wordpress.com. That's a quick little plug, because I still use it these days.
Hey.
And the first blog post I ever wrote was called "In Defense of Cliches," and my lecturer took one look at it and went, "Oh dear." So yeah, I
Oh, that's awkward.
and I was like, oh, I forgot about that. But no, I put up an argument. I think it's probably my first blog post I ever did. I put up an argument about why cliches aren't always a bad thing, and all ideas are new at some point. So, you know, I guess like you said, this is harkening back to the time when gadgets weren't. Like, obviously now, when the time the movie came out, that was a little... I guess gadgets weren't cliche, but all this kind of stuff about getting yourself captured and, you know, it's not what it looks like, all that kind of stuff. Might have been cliche by the time the movie came out, but if we're talking about fiction and narrative stuff around the time that this is set, not so much, which is maybe a stretch, but we've always got to have one thing which might be a stretch on our podcast. We've always got to have at least one point where I clarify that it's probably a stretch, and I'm doing that.
No, I think it's fine to. I honestly think like if you immerse yourself in the time setting and everything, a lot of it like naturally flows together a lot better, and it doesn't feel cliche because in the context of the movie it doesn't feel it at all. Honestly, I think everything is very much earned and it makes sense in the context of the movie and isn't there specifically for the cliches. I mean, like you say, like cliches can be done well. Or cliches can be good if they're done well. And if it's not like, I guess, if it's subtle enough as well, like if it's not blatantly obvious, and obviously works within the narrative as well. I mean, this isn't what it looks like stuff very much plays into the character. I feel because in that scene he's very like awkward and being like, she's like, oh, you did all this stuff, it was all right, and she's like, no, you did some amazing stuff, and he was like, oh, I guess, like. Like he's clearly like very awkward in that situation. Yeah. Which plays more into his character, which is why I think the quote unquote cliche is fine. In that context.
He's an awkward boy.
There's still plenty of good stuff in there that's like new as well. Like the whole just the idea of Peggy having the sway that she does in that film is amazing.
Yeah.
Because this is a time when women were like the lesser of the two. Well, obviously, there would have been more than two genders.
But the perceived two genders.
At the time, perceived two genders, that's the word. Well, thank you.
No, and I think it's very interesting. They don't shy away from it either. I think one of the first things that happens when Peggy Carter's introduced is she's in a training camp, and one of the guys is like, he's making basically fun of her for being a woman, so she beats the shit out of him.
She beats the shit out of him, and then the I don't know what rank he is,
Corporal?
But he's just like, oh, nice, you're beating him in, good.
Yeah.
Is he a corporal? Is he?
I want to say he's a corporal. He strikes me.
I know. I just love that. I just love that actor. He's great.
Yeah, like I said, so many great actors in this.
I think one of my favorite lines of his that he says is he has quite a few good lines, but one of my favorite lines of his he says is like, if you've got something to say, keep it yourself. Like points at her. Yeah.
And also like
that's what I love. Sorry.
He admits he's wrong as well. When Captain America returns with all of those soldiers he freed, he walks past her and he just says, "Hope, huh?" Like kind of like I guess I'll kind of embrace that idea then, considering I was so clearly fucking wrong.
Yeah. But like his whole character is good as well because one of the things I like about him is he doesn't treat her differently.
Yeah.
At all. He treats her like he treats everyone else.
Yeah.
As a soldier. She is there to obviously help in that war effort, and it doesn't matter that she's a woman. She is just treated as if she is there in the war effort. That's all she's there for, like whether she's a woman or not, which I think is great.
When she kisses Steve Rogers on the way out to the final ship, and then he just looks at him and goes, "I'm not kissing you." That was a great moment.
Yeah, he's great.
How did you?
I remember that scene happening a lot earlier for some reason, like during the montage of like destroying a bunch of shit. I remember that happening then, and I don't know why.
They made him work for it, which I think is good.
Sure.
I've noticed in these movies, they're not afraid to be clear that there is an attraction between these two characters, but they're not going to cheapen either one of those characters by forcing things along too fast, which sometimes happens in movies.
Sure.
And that allows you to respect these characters, I guess. But also, how did you feel about the final fight of the movie? when they're in the plane.
Final fight.
Yeah. Captain America versus
They
Red Skull.
definitely tried to do some cool things with it. I think the issue with this movie is there's a lot of action. So to have any conceivable like good final fight, because it's just
The
two
opposite of
dudes
Iron
hitting each
Man.
other.
Yeah.
Exactly, it's two dudes punching each other. Like it's so like action movie wartime.
Yeah, it was.
Done. It's not really a superhero fight. The only thing that makes it superhero is they're both super. But
Yeah.
it's the saying: if everyone's super, no one is. So
If
it's just a normal
everybody's
fight.
super, no one is. Yeah, sorry, Incredibles. We need to do that one day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
sure,
thought it was
sure.
okay. It served its purpose. The main thing
Yeah.
I put down about it is how it ended. I didn't realize that Red Skull literally just gets fucking zapped off into space, and that directly
Yeah.
ties into when we next see him.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
really cool.
Yeah, it was really cool, and Steve's just like, what I love about it as well is Steve's priorities at the end of that fight as well. He looks at the Tesseract like falling through the thing, completely like keeps walking because he knows like, oh, I need to stop this. That can fucking wait.
Yeah.
The threat is gone. That's whatever. We'll get that. But I'm concerned about what's happening, about the lives that are probably in danger because of all the nukes he saw obviously walking in. Like he
Yeah.
knows what the ship's doing, so he's obviously his priority to stop it. I think that's fantastic.
And
Just watching it just go through the ground, just like
it's
awesome.
like, oh, that's gone. Whereas Red Skull would be like, no.
Yeah. What have you done?
Do we know what happened to his apprentice, or not apprentice, his fucking scientist buddy? Because last time we saw him, he was in prison. Did he just? I guess that was the end of his story.
His whole thing, because I think they just protected him after that because he obviously made the whole speech to him being like, it's either you or him. So
I thought it
and
was.
obviously he picked him.
I thought it was interesting, kind of maybe unexplored as well, how Red Skull was upset that the scientist dude gave the Americans everything, but he had to work for every piece of information from him. Whereas up until that point, you got the impression that Red Skull didn't care about him. It came across as jealous. That like not just that he was a better resource to the Americans, but that personally he was more willing to be a better resource to the Americans.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's more fully explored in the comics anywhere, but I just thought that was kind of interesting. He treats him so shit, and then at the end of it, he's like, "Why did he hate me?" Like, obviously, it didn't come across like that at all, but that's kind of how I took it.
Yeah.
Why was he good to
Yeah,
you and
for
not to
sure.
me? Like, it's almost like he was
Yeah.
upset that his pet dog had chosen a different owner. It was.
But that's something
Interesting.
that's something that's interesting because you know it's gonna happen from the get go anyway because of his reluctantness for the entire
Yeah,
movie.
when he's
like
got
whenever
more
Red
powers.
Skull would do something, he'd be like in a tizzy as well. Like when they're in the thing, he's like, oh, we're gonna need more than this, and he's like, oh, but the workers, we'll get more. And then that guy comes over to get him to sign something. He's like, fuck off, and then walks off. It's like, all right.
Yeah.
And like the delayed like Hail Hydra when they shoot all the soldiers that
Yeah.
come to obviously find out what he's been doing.
Hail Hydra.
Very
Yeah.
interesting.
Oh.
But I honestly think I love Red Skull as a character because he's very
Yeah,
smug
I
about
was about
everything.
to say we've
He's
got
very smug.
we've got another good villain. He's not an amazing villain, but he is a good villain, and it's a shame we didn't.
He's
see more
very
of him.
he's very like two tone in the I'm evil because world domination. I am stronger, you know. But like he's a very charismatic villain. And he's very smug about everything.
I kind of wish we got to see him in a modern Thor film, like not necessarily for that property, but that kind of a film, like where they overblow everything for the sake of comedy. He would have been amazing if they just really leaned into the maniacal side of him. That would have been fun to see. Because in this one, obviously his plans of world domination, and he was a little bit insane, but he was still grounded in some way. And I think that's important that he was for this movie. It wouldn't have fit the tone otherwise. But if they went full on like Ratchet and Clank Doctor Nefarious style, which is a reference you don't get, my apologies. But basically, you know what I mean, like super villain, like annihilate him. I would have loved to see that.
Yeah. I think the whole idea of him was that he was striving to be, you know, a god, and he was using the power of the gods to become a god. And then obviously he had that moment where he must. I honestly think him picking up the Tesseract, he must have been at like a point in his mind where he believed to be that god, you know?
I mean, didn't he say he saw
And
visions of the future or something? Or am I thinking of something else?
something like that.
So, I don't know.
I'd find it. I'd be interested if they like released something that was like more indicative of like or more descriptive of what happened from those events up until obviously between when he gets like zoomed off into space.
Yeah.
Like, is there like some sort of lead up to with him becoming the Herald of the Soul Stone?
Maybe. I mean, aren't they doing a what if series and some of that like is around that era of time? I don't know.
Well, what if
they'll be
stuff
able
is
to-
like what if?
I
This thing
know,
happened?
but
Like, it's not so much a what if thing that will be anything.
I don't think they would explore that particular part you were talking about. But we
It's
might
such
see
a
some more Red Skull in the what if
yeah.
series.
The issue with it is it's probably such a small thing that it's not worth doing. But it would still be interesting if they released something.
You could say
like,
that
small.
one of the downsides of the MCU is that because it's always leading towards an Avengers level threat, it it doesn't fail to focus on the superheroes' individual stories, but it could do a slightly better job. Like, instead of having Red Skull get whisked off to go to his point in Infinity War, what if we had had some more time with Steve Rogers in the World War II era, and we'd had more time to see Red Skull as a villain? Like, it's interesting. I'm not sure I would trade it for the larger universe, but at the same time, it is interesting.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's because the issue is like they need to, because it's an origin story for a lot of these films, and so it's just or it's a setting up, like you said, it's a setting up for the future thing.
Yeah.
Like more stuff like Civil War, I think would be a good way to do it. Like more stuff where it's not necessarily just one hero's film. It's like a collection of them doing.
So
a
you'd
thing
say lean even
and,
more
like,
into the
interacting.
Avengers level stuff a bit then.
So like have like your separate films and then a combination of some of them doing a thing that then combine and then build up into the Avengers film. I think that'd be fantastic. Doing stuff like that.
Isn't that kind of a
Because
DC
then
universe though? That's what they did with like Batman. Versus
Yeah, and I don't
Superman
think that's
and
necessarily a
Justice
bad
League.
thing. I don't think it's a bad thing though. Like, I mean, obviously Justice League stuff works a little bit differently.
I think DC's movies.
I feel like Justice League is very different to Avengers.
I think they ran before they could walk over there. I think their issue, and I guess we'll get more into this when we do those movies one day, but I think the main issue with the DC Universe movies is that they saw Marvel Cinematic Universe taking off, and they went, we need to get to that point as soon as possible, and because of that they did not
And they
flesh
did it
out.
too quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, think of how long it took them to do it. 10 years.
Yeah.
It took them 10 years to get to Endgame.
Yeah.
And it fucking destroyed everything.
Yeah.
Like, it's so good.
I wish they'd taken their time.
I honestly think, like, what DC did wrong was they linked everything too quickly.
Yeah.
There was no build-up. It was just, oh, they're all in the same universe. It's like, right, okay. It's like, Batman versus Superman should have been a thing later on when more stuff was established.
Give Batfleck his own movie as well, because then people care more about him.
Justice League was
in
done
that conflict.
too early because no one cared about Aquaman, no one cared about Flash, no one cared about Cyborg. I mean, I cared about Cyborg, Teen Titans, but
I haven't seen the movie.
like
Aquaman
no one
yet.
cared about these characters because they weren't established in the universe. No one cared.
Yeah.
And
Also, they
so-
need more cohesion of narrative across movies because Wonder Woman versus Wonder Woman in Justice League is. The Amazonians got a lot skimpier in Justice League, which was kind of an upsetting thing to see because the whole point of Wonder Woman as a movie, which I believe had a female director, was to be like they're more than just the skimpy fan service part side of DC Comics. But I think we're getting on a very a very tangential point right now. But
I don't know, but I just want to say, I think the whole point is they should have, for Justice League stuff to work, they should have had their own separate movies doing stuff first.
Yeah.
Batfleck never had his own Batman movie.
Yeah,
Which
is a
wasn't an issue.
crying
Batman's such an easy film to like set up.
Yeah.
It's been done so many times.
And to be fair
you just
to them,
pick
that
a
might
villain
be
because he's
why-
got so many good villains. Batman has so many good villains.
That might be why they skipped out on the Batman movie because they know it's been done so many times. To be fair,
But there's probably so many things that haven't been explored though.
Yeah.
Bane was explored in a way that was completely different to the comics. They could have done Bane again and done him in the more comic fueled way. But obviously they're going for the dark and edgy, so you know it's got to be dark and edgy. But like Superman, I think was done very well. Man of Steel, very good movie. I liked it. Very much a spectacle movie for sure. Yes. But I liked it.
It's shonen-made superhero.
A bit shit. Some of the
fucking
character
Man
stuff
of
was a bit
Steel.
shit. Let's be honest.
What's that?
Some of the character stuff was a bit shit. Let's be honest.
Yeah, sure.
Why did he have to walk into the tornado and not be saved?
Yeah,
it makes no sense.
That was dumb.
You need to die to build your character.
And then
okay.
The next movie's version of that. Why did you say that name? Why did you say that name? With
like,
Martha.
It doesn't make sense. There's so much stuff that doesn't make sense in the universe.
Yeah.
Whereas, I mean, we've literally done 4 of these, and every single film makes sense in that universe.
Yeah.
Every single one. And these are films that came out almost 10 years ago. Like, 8 to 10 years ago, roughly. When did this film come out? Like, was it 13 or 12?
I want to say... My brain says 2011.
Forget.
Maybe it's
no, it was 11. It was 11. It was 11 because
Mine's
2012 was Avengers. 2012 was Avengers.
Yeah.
The only reason I remember that is because there was a fucking trailer for it at the end of the movie.
I know, right? But before we get to that
It was
point...
so like, oh...
Before we get to that point, we need to talk about the scene where Captain America... Steve Rogers wakes up in modern day times. I think that was done really well.
Ooh, yes.
I
Yes,
think
we do. Yes,
that's
we do.
one of my favourite scenes in all of the MCU.
It's a good scene. Very good scene.
Just like how he knows something is off. Because he is he's such a genuine person, and he wakes up in such a false place of this is not genuine, this is them trying to trick him. Doesn't matter the intentions,
you know,
they're trying to lie to him, and because he's such a genuine dude, it doesn't mix, and yeah.
So interestingly, like I would say like a couple months ago, I read a thing that someone pointed out, a very big outlier as to why he probably realized so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
It was because of the woman, and her tie was tied like a man ties their tie back in the 40s.
Oh right.
Apparently, her tie was because if you look at her tie, it's very fat compared to everyone else. It's a different type of knot. A knot that men use, not women. Women's knots were a lot more slender. Yeah. And so you can see the point where he realizes as well, because he looks at her, because there's the initial like, oh, when she enters, he looks at her, blah, blah, blah. And then it pans back to him. He looks at her. There's like almost like a realization for a moment. He looks out the window really quickly again, and then looks at the thing and goes, well, where am I really? Like he knows, like in that moment. And it's such a massive transition. You can see it in his face.
Yeah.
I mean, Chris Evans, fucking amazing actor, obviously, for being able to pull that off. But like the way he does it, you can read it on his face so well. Like there's that almost that switch being flipped on, and he notices, and he's like, okay, where am I?
Like, I think also they intentionally chose someone who looks like Peggy Carter.
Yeah.
And that doesn't sit right with him immediately.
Yeah, it's a bit uncanny. Like,
yeah.
It's like, okay.
That's exactly right, uncanny. And obviously he's not going to feel right because he's just slept for 70 years. But,
for sure.
Yeah, the first thing he does is look at the radio, and the whole conceit they give is that he recognises that game, which I thought was slightly far-fetched, but then I'm not a football fan, so I don't know. But he
I mean, stuff like that you probably
there.
remember, like, I feel so.
I just feel like if they put on an old Overwatch League thing, I wouldn't recognise it as an old one immediately. Maybe by the team members, but then I'm not hugely invested in Overwatch League, so that's not really a good comparison.
Well, the issue with that is it's a very was it a baseball game?
Game. Oh, I thought it was football. Yeah, maybe it's baseball.
I wasn't sure. Like whatever it is,
baseball is more
it's
Steve
a
Rogers.
much more like slower thing. It's set up in such a way, you know, so it's a lot more deliberate. So everything is a lot more obvious. So that's my thought anyway.
And just that,
but
how do you? I've considered this from a writing perspective before. How do you write a scene where a character from a previous time is interacting with a modern day time, and they are so out of their element, they see so many things that they do not understand. To be fair, you're not inside their head when you're watching a movie, you're watching them. But I think Chris Evans acted it brilliantly. The whole, like...
He did.
They didn't overdo it, he didn't break down or anything, but he was very much like, what the fuck is going on? And
It
he's
was
someone who
his
usually has
version of
composure.
like breaking down as well, because he just stopped. He stopped like when he was in the, is it like New York Square or something, that area?
Yeah,
Like
Times Square.
I think it's New York or something like that.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
Times
know. I haven't
Square.
been there. But like he stops and he's stopped, and then obviously when all the cars come in, he doesn't run or fight anymore.
Yeah.
So he's like,
I think also
what do I
because he
do? Where do I go?
recognises-
Like,
I think it's also because he recognizes that he's in America, even if it does look super different. He recognizes America, and so
There's
he
obviously
knows that
next to
he's
that
home.
soldier as well, which
I think it goes a long way to making him realize that it's not malicious intent that he just escaped from, if you know what I mean. Which is what he immediately thought when he realized how false the situation he was in was. But yeah, that was really good. Also, we forgot to talk about it at the time, but we did already touch on how sad that that scene was where he's on the phone to Peggy Carter and like, I'm gonna need a raid check on
very
that.
upsetting scene. It's very upsetting. Like I love that scene as well, because when it keeps going back to Cap, he's obviously just staring straight ahead because he knows it's coming. He's just focusing. He's not looking. He's just focused. I think the entire point of his face being like he's just focusing on her voice.
Yeah.
So he's literally just
visualising
staring
it.
dead ahead. You can see it in his face. He's dead face completely, and he's just focusing on the voice, which I think is very good.
I loved the touch
You can see it in his
of
face.
that Corporal Sergeant, whoever dude, where he immediately realized what was going on and he just motioned to the other guy sat next to him. He's like, "Come on, let's go." Like, he immediately knew that there was no point of him staying in the room because he knew, like, it was one of those things where, rationally speaking, it's not like there was anything that gave away that Steve Rogers was in a helpless situation, but instinctively, in his voice and in how the situation was playing out, he just knew, oh, I need to give Peggy Carter alone time right now.
Yeah, exactly.
That was really well done. Even if he was still like looking in on her to make sure she was okay as well.
Yeah,
Oh,
for sure.
Good movie.
One thing I do want to mention as well before.
Yeah.
We didn't say anything about Howard Stark.
Oh yeah. That's Tony.
He's definitely like, he's not like Tony Stark levels of eccentric, but you can definitely see like he gets it from somewhere, you know.
There's family
like,
resemblance.
It's definitely like runs in the family almost,
Yeah.
like how it is, because like the way he like rocks up and he's like, "Ooh, look at me, fancy you," and then obviously he kisses that woman and then he's like carrying on. It's like, "Oh, look at this, amazing," ooh, like all that stuff.
Yeah.
You know.
Also, it shows a change in the times because he kisses one of his dancers who's on the stage. Tony wouldn't do that because that would be such a serious fucking breach of
oh yeah, for
professionalism
sure.
and stuff.
Like,
I thought that was something I
it
noticed
very much
immediately.
sets the tone of like the time and everything.
It's
as
very
well.
much like, this is who Tony Stark would be if he existed in 1943,
Yes.
which
Sure.
I thought was cool.
And I do like how it's literally like in the same place. The stage
Yeah.
is in the exact same place they do all the stuff in Iron Man 2.
Yeah,
It's in the exact same place.
because he mentions, doesn't it, like this is like the... Does he mention it's a Sentiev one? I think they make some throwback reference to the fact that...
Yeah,
they've been doing this for
it's
years.
like a big deal.
Yeah. So yeah, again, it all ties together very nicely. But overall, Reese, what did you think of that movie? How many Captain America shields would you give it out of the 10?
I'd give it a impossible trajectory angle, bouncing off several things and destroying a Nazi out of 5.
Oh, okay. That's great. Now I have to think up one. I would give it.
That's
Bounces
such a
off of 3 trees and then bonks against 2 heads and then comes back to Captain America's arm flawlessly. Out of 10.
Oh wow.
So I'd say that's almost the same score as yours, maybe a tiny bit lower because yours makes a bit more sense. But
I guess.
I forgot we were doing that. I think we forgot to do that for 4, didn't we? But oh well.
I'll do it now. I give Chris Hemsworth work routine out of 5.
But that's a good work routine he has.
It was a decent film.
It was. I would give it.
He was also a triangle though, let's be honest.
I would give it Natalie Portman trying to stash her cereal in the cupboard and then realizing that's not where cereal goes out of 10.
No, it's the dishes she put in there.
Yeah, but there's cereal in the
Yeah,
dish. It's like washing.
yeah, but then she pulled the dishes out and then put them in the sink. She
yeah,
put the cereal in the fucking sink, did she? Jesus Christ, pay attention.
you know what I mean. Get out.
She's
of here.
gonna be Thor.
I hope so. I actually think she'll
She
make
is.
a good Fem 4.
Yeah, I'm excited. Right, so it's important to announce the if we're done with this one, it's important to announce what we'll be doing next week.
Sorry, are you trying to hijack my show right now? Can you imagine if I just suddenly took ownership of a podcast? Like
Excuse me. I'm talking.
Oh.
So yeah. So.
I could just mute.
Wow, we've been building up to this episode 5. Wow. Obviously it's Avengers, isn't it?
It is Avengers next.
Avengers, isn't
yeah.
it?
Well, it's all been building up
It's
to.
Avengers,
That's what
isn't
it felt like at the time, but actually it was just step 1, phase 1, you might say.
The first
Avengers.
phase.
I'll probably mention this next week as well. But I remember, it was probably the first time I really paid attention to the whole MCU thing. I remember someone said to me, Avengers is a perfect movie. It has everything you could ever want out of a movie. It's the best thing ever made. He was telling me, oh man, it has aliens and all these different superheroes. He was very excited about it. I don't remember who it was. I just remember he was very
People
excited
probably
about it.
want my general movie then.
Huh?
Uh-oh. I thought it was an alright movie,
Oh,
but
yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't think
no,
it was
I'm
amazing.
I'm not saying it was all of those things. That's just how it was sold to me. Although I did enjoy it at the time, I remember. But
It's an enjoyable movie, but it definitely has issues.
I remember they spent a long time on the Avengers fighting amongst themselves as they met, and I think it didn't leave enough room for the finale or something. I don't know. It's been a long time.
Well, it was the, unruly heroes coming together against the evil.
Yeah.
Kind of the point, isn't it?
A mischievous little prick. Called Tom Hiddleston, who's actually a lovely chap.
He is a lovely chap.
Right. That's going to do it for us. I still don't have any outro music or anything, so... Reese talk.
Oh, it's been a lovely show, lovely coming out. Thank you so much to our lovely audience. Oh, this is good. And Steve Rogers throwing that shield around. Man, he really threw that shield. And, can't wait to see you in the next one. See you then, you lovely people.